بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So today we're continuing with our words of the Prophet Sallahu Alayhe Wasalam, and we are going to continue the hadith that we have been doing. And last week our discussion was about sadaqah, giving in the path of Allah, and today we're going to be talking about the next in our series of the 5 pillars of Islam. So we did Salah, and we've done Zakah, giving in the path of Allah, and then there's the wajib giving, fard giving that we have to give, which is called Zakah, and then there's the voluntary, which is called the Sadaqah. So today we're moving on from there, and we're going to talk about the next pillar, which is going for the Hajj. Now, Hajj is one of those pillars, is fard if it is compulsory on a person, if they can afford it and they have somebody that they can go with. And so it says that if a man sets out with the intention of performing Hajj, or a woman, Umrah or Jihad, meets with his death on the way, he will be granted the rewards of Jihad, Hajj or Umrah by his Maker. And this is the hadith of Al-Bayhaqi. That means if a person sets out with the intention of performing the Hajj and they don't make it there, for example, they die in the way, and you know that in the olden times, the journey itself would take months. First, they traveled by foot with animals, then they used to go by boat. So the journey would take a very long time, and then too, the path itself would be perilous because anything could happen. So people, when they would leave for the Hajj, they would leave and knowing that a part of them knew, and their families knew, that it's possible that they wouldn't make it back. So they had, if you look at all the customs that we have around the world of people going for the Hajj, they go and meet everybody, they ask for forgiveness. In rural areas, the whole village will turn out and go to the first port. For example, if they're going to travel by train to the next city to go to the airport, then all the villagers or the people of the city, their friends and family, they will go to the train station and see them off. And so it's a very big thing that somebody would go for the Hajj. And before they, in the not so long ago, when they went, they would take all the provisions with them. So many times they would take huge suitcases, or we wouldn't even call them suitcases, call them trunks. They would be filled not just with their clothes, but they would be filled with food items as well, because they had to sustain themselves on the journey and even when they got there. So if you think about it like that, then a person with a lot of money at that time, you would have to be a rich person to be able to afford this journey of a number of months. Sometimes for some people it was 6 months, because once they got there, because the journey was so long, they would just rest and stay there for a good few months, and then they would make the journey back. So you'd have to have a substantial amount of money and resources to be able to do that. And even today we see that people who go for the Hajj, especially the first one, the Fard one, it's a big deal, because they're going to fulfill the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're going to fulfill what Allah has commanded them. And so this journey is a very big journey. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that anybody who sets out to do this, or even the lesser Hajj, which is known as the Umrah, or even Jihad, that means they're going out for the purpose of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to defend the borders of Islam, for example, then, and they meet with their death on the way, and they didn't even get to do that, the Hajj or the Umrah, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward them for it. Because last week we talked about how important the reward is, that the reward precedes the deed itself. So that's why it's that is the intention. If you've not yet made the Hajj or the Umrah, then you should make an intention that on my first opportunity that Allah gives me, I will go, inshallah. And once you make the intention, even if you can't see how it's going to happen, and this is the thing, many things in life we can't see how they're going to happen. So because we can't envision it, we don't think that it's going to be possible. But for good deeds, we should never stand, or things that Allah has told us to do, we should never think that how am I going to do it. We should make an intention, and Allah will make it happen. Allah will make amazing things happen. For example, there's usually about the Hajj, if there's people who come in amazing ways. Like, for example, there was somebody had gone to make a documentary in an African country, and he was using, at that time, he was using his cameras and things like that, and he was using a drone, and the drone happened to fall, and it came and it fell at the feet of a man, and he was so amazed by it. As an old man, he was so amazed by it, and he picked it up, and he said to the drone, he said, I wish that you could take me for the Hajj. I wish you could take me there. And the filmmaker, he was recording all of this, and it happened to be a channel from Turkey, and they broadcast this live. It became part of the whatever they were filming. And then when the people saw it, they were so moved by it that they looked this old man up, and they set up a trip for him to go for the Hajj. And subhanallah, look at these kind of coincidences. We think they are coincidences, but it's Allah making it happen. So for any good thing that we want to happen, we should make the intention, and we shouldn't think too much about when and how, and will this person get ready, and what will I do with this, and how will I leave my work. And we should just make the intention and pray to Allah that He makes it possible. Right. Hadith number 42. So on the hadith of Al-Bukhari and Muslim, on the authority of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh, asked which deed inspired the greatest respect, the Prophet ﷺ replied, to believe in Allah and His Messenger. So the Prophet ﷺ was asked which deed inspires the greatest respect. So the Prophet replied, to believe in Allah and His Messenger. When asked what ranked next in order of merit, he said, to perform jihad for the sake of Allah. Asked what came after that, he replied, Hajj Mabrur, that is, performing pilgrimage while remaining free from sin. So first deed, the Prophet said, what garners the greatest respect is, first thing is to believe in Allah and His Messenger. Was the second thing, to perform jihad for the sake of Allah. Now, when we talk about jihad, we're not just talking about battle, going into the battlefield. It's defending what is right, defending that is the definition, and striving for what is correct and right. That's the definition of jihad. And asked what came after that, he replied, Hajj Mabrur, that means a pilgrimage which is free from sin. And that's another thing, that if you are making intention for the Hajj, you should make an intention that you get a Hajj which is accepted by Allah. Hajj Mabrur Maqbul, that is accepted and is free from sins. Now, next hadith is of Ibn Majah on the authority of Abdullah ibn Abbas. He said, a man who decides to perform Hajj should act with promptness, for he may fall sick, or his mount may get lost, or a need may arise that becomes an obstacle. So the Prophet ﷺ said that whoever decides to perform the Hajj should act with promptness. That means he should act quickly, for he may fall sick. That means he might get sick and not be able to travel. Some obstacle may come, or his mount may get lost. That means he might lose his mount, meaning the camel, or even the resources. In our modern times, it would be resources. That means when he wants to go later on, because he's delayed it so much, he might not have the money to go, or a need may arise that becomes an obstacle. That means that some other need might come up, which will become an obstacle. So when a person decides to perform the Hajj, he should do it straight away. That means he shouldn't think too much into it. Like a lot of people, they think, oh, I'm too young to perform the Hajj. I should be doing it when I'm older, when I've left all the sins, when I start wearing hijab, for example. These are all from the shaitan. This kind of thinking is from the shaitan. You shouldn't, there's no right time, as in when I'm ready. You're ready when all the means are available to you. So you have the money, you have somebody to travel with, you have your mahram. You can leave everything behind here and everything will be okay. For example, if you have children, then there's people to look after them, etc. So everything falls into place. That's the right time to go. You can't have this internal stream where you're thinking that, oh, I'm not ready, I have to be a bit older. Older people go for Hajj. That's just not true. Yes, in the olden days, it was older people who went for Hajj because they were the ones who could probably afford it. And not just affording it, but they were free to go because they didn't have all the responsibilities. So they were much freer to go to make the journey. But the best Hajj you can make is when you are young and when you are fit and healthy, because the Hajj journey itself is not easy. It's a very physical journey, and now you'll see that they are extending the haram. It's getting bigger and bigger. So to walk from one side to the other is a mission in itself, right? So you have to be fit and healthy to be able to walk around everywhere. So that's one of the things. And yes, people who get sick and they get old, yes, they do go for Hajj and Umrah, but then there's people pushing them in the wheelchairs, and it can be done like that too. But isn't it better to be able to walk yourself and do everything yourself? So that's another consideration, right? And the next hadith is from Ibn Majah on the authority of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. The Prophet ﷺ said, God's blessings are for everyone, but a strong believer is better than a weak one. Wish for things which are beneficial to you, and in this seek God's help. Do not lose heart. If you are visited by misfortune, do not say, if I had done this or that, it could have been averted, because if opens the door to Satan. So this hadith is telling us that Prophet ﷺ said that Allah's blessings are for everyone, but a strong believer is better than a weak one. So they're both good. There's good in the strong believer and the weak believer. Now, what's the definition of a strong believer? So a strong believer is somebody who is, it can be strong in Iman, in their faith, somebody who's strong in knowledge, somebody who's strong physically, somebody who's strong financially, socially. All kinds of strength are meant here, because somebody who is strong is going to be able to do more than a person who is weak. And we know that. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying Allah's blessings are for everyone, but a strong believer is better than a weak one. So from this we learn that it's important to remain strong. It's important to work on yourself so that your strengths are always worked on, and not give up and say, well, I'll just take a back seat and it's okay. and other people can do it. No, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying a strong believer is better than a weak one. And wish for things which are beneficial to you, and in this seek God's help. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that wish for things which are beneficial for you. So Allah is encouraging us to follow our good dreams which are beneficial for us. So if we want to do good things in the world, good things for ourselves and for other people, then Allah is saying that follow that dream and ask for Allah's help, because Allah will help you. And do not lose heart. Don't give up and say, many people, they make one dua or they make it for a month and then they become despondent and say, oh, Allah doesn't listen to my du'as, or I've always got bad luck. No, the billah. Don't make predictions like this for yourself, and certainly keep on asking for Allah's help, because times don't always stay the same. Times are always changing. So don't lose heart. If you're in a tight spot right now, don't lose heart and think that, oh, this is it now, this is how it's going to be. No, your time can change very suddenly. When times change, it can change in split moments. And a terrible life can become a beautiful life, and a beautiful life can become a terrible life. Na'udhu billah. This is why we should never become complacent. We shouldn't become complacent with what's around us, what's happening, because things can change very, very quickly. If you are visited by misfortune, do not say, if I had done this or that, it could have been averted, because if opens the door to Satan. Now, if you are visited by misfortune, what this means is, if something bad does happen to you, terrible even, then don't go back on it. Don't keep chewing on it and say, well, if I had done it like this and this, then it's my fault. If I had done that, and had I been there, had I said this, had I said, no, don't do that, because the shaitan wants to make you feel worse than you already do, right? You already have one thing to contend with. That's the misfortune. You have to deal with that misfortune. You're already dealing with that. But the shaitan will come and he'll open another door and another door, which is going to make you feel worse, because he wants to lead you down this path of feeling terrible about yourself, about others, about the situation. And so at some point you have to realize that this is a misfortune. It came from the hands of Allah, because without Allah's knowledge, it could never have happened. So Allah knows this is happening. Allah meant for this to happen. And sure, it doesn't feel good right now, but I have to get through this. It's a tunnel I have to get through, and I will get through it with the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And don't let the shaitan come and open other doors which are going to make you feel worse and worse and worse. So this is a beautiful hadith that we should memorize, and I'm going to read it again. It's, God's blessings are for everyone, but a strong believer is better than a weak one. Wish for things which are beneficial to you, and in this seek God's help. Do not lose heart. If you are visited by misfortune, do not say, if I had done this or that, it could have been averted, because if opens the door to Satan. So it's important to remember. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. And this is a hadith from At-Tirmidhi. And young man, the Prophet said to Abdullah ibn al-Abbas, here are some words of advice. Be mindful of God, and God will protect you. Be mindful of God, and you will find him before you. If you ask, ask of God. If you seek help of God. Know that if all the people were to gather together to give you the benefit of anything, it could be something that God had already prescribed for you. And that if they gathered together to harm you with anything, this would only be as God had already ordained. And this is the hadith of At-Tirmidhi. So the Prophet ﷺ is giving advice to Abdullah ibn Abbas, and he said, here's some words of advice. Be mindful of God, and God will protect you. What this means is be mindful. That means think of Allah, right? Think of him, and Allah will protect you. And if you have Allah before you, that means he is in your thoughts and he is in your mind, and you will find him before you. So when you need help, he will be right there before you. If you ask ask of Allah. If you seek help of Allah. Now he's saying when you need help, you don't need to feel helpless and say, now what should I do? Who should I turn to now? Right? You don't need to feel like that. You can ask Allah to help you. Know that if all the people were to gather together to give you the benefit of anything, it would be something that God had already prescribed for you. So that if all the people gathered and they wanted to give you something good, they wanted to cure the cancer, for example, right? And sometimes if you'll see that when there's a terrible story and people's hearts are moved, everybody feels compelled to help. Everybody stands up and they pray, right? And so this hadith is telling us that if everybody got together to benefit us, then it would be something that Allah had already ordained. That means they could only help us in as much as Allah had already decided. And if they gathered to harm us for anything, they could only be as Allah had already ordained, right? In as much as Allah has already ordained. So, in other words, we should remember at times of trouble that it is Allah who protects us. This is what we learn from this hadith. It is Allah who protects us at all times. If we are mindful of Allah, that means we're thinking about Allah's presence and He's in our thoughts and in our hearts, then He will be with us. Especially when we need help, we ask Allah alone. So when we're in some tight spot, for example, and we need help, right? So immediately people will start thinking of who should I call? Maybe I should call my mom and talk to her. Maybe I'll call my best friend, right? We start thinking about people. But the first person you should talk to before you talk to anybody, the first point of duty for us is to talk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ask Him first, and then He will tell you, He will inspire your heart of how or who you should be, who it is that needs to, that you can get help from, and who's genuinely going to help you. And then it says that no matter what happens to you, and if people, the whole world was to get together and they wanted to benefit you, they'll only benefit you as much as Allah has already ordained, as much as Allah has decided. And if the whole world got together and they tried to harm you, they could only harm you as much as Allah has ordained. So this important hadith to remember, that it is Allah who is in charge. We should ask Him for help. We should turn to Him for help. And only the benefit and the harm that will come to us is only as much as Allah has decided. Right. Next hadith is, on the day of judgment, from amongst all those destined for hell, a particular man, the richest man in the world, will be brought forth and cast into hell for a moment. Then he will be taken out and will be asked, O son of Adam, have you ever known the good things of life? Have you ever seen comfortable days? And he will reply, by God, O Lord, never. Then from amongst all those destined for paradise, one who has suffered the most in the world will be brought forth and will be allowed to enter paradise for a moment. Then he will be taken out and asked, O son of Adam, have you ever seen suffering? Have you ever experienced hardship in your life? He will reply, Oh God, no. I have never suffered. I have never undergone hardship. And this is hadith of Muslim on the authority of Anas bin Malik. So in this hadith, it says that on the day of judgment, all the people who are going to hell, one man, the richest man in the world, will be brought forth and cast into hell for a moment. So he'll just be dipped into hell and taken out again. So he'll just go for a moment. He will go, he will see, hear, feel hell and be taken out again. And then he'll be asked, O son of Adam, did you know good things in your life? And this was the richest man in the world who had had the most comfortable days. Every day in his life had been comfortable and he had never seen any hardship. He had enjoyed himself so much in the world and he had lived a long life enjoying himself. But one dip into hell and being taken out, and he will be asked, have you ever seen comfortable days? And he'll reply, no, oh Lord, never. That means I've never seen any good days. That means that one sight of hell will make him forget anything good, everything good that he has seen. And he then amongst all those people destined for paradise, one who has suffered the most in the world will be brought forth and will be allowed to enter paradise for a moment. So that one person will be allowed to go into paradise just for a moment, a dip into paradise and taken out. And then they'll be asked, have you ever seen suffering? And that person will reply that, no, God, no, Allah, we have never seen any suffering. I've never suffered. I have never gone hardship. That means they will forget completely any and every hardship they had in this world. Allah will make them, the sight of paradise, Jannah, will make them forget everything that they experienced in this world. Subhanallah. So paradise is very beautiful, and we will forget all the hardships that we go through in this life. And we have to understand the nature of this life, right? The nature of this life is that people will go through their predestined hardships, and everybody has hardships in this life. And that's the nature of the beast. That's what it is. It is what it is. And the sooner we accept it, right, the sooner we have acceptance of this life and what it is and how Allah has made it, then it becomes easier for us to live in this world, because we don't have any false expectations. And we don't have expectations. It's the expectations which lead us to sadness and depression and not being able to cope in this life. It's the expectations that we have, that things should be like this, and why did this happen to me, and why is it like this, and why is there so much suffering, etc., etc. But if we understand the nature of this world, then we understand that this life, everybody has to go through the hardships that have been destined for them. Right. According to Mu'adh ibn Jabal, when the Prophet ﷺ appointed him governor of Yemen, he said, abstain from luxuries, for those who live luxurious lives are no servants of God. And this is a hadith of Ahmad bin Hanbal. So it's from Mu'adh ibn Jabal that when the Prophet ﷺ appointed him governor of Yemen, he was going as a governor, so he had a high post, and he was going as a ruler. So the Prophet ﷺ, look at the advice he gives him. He says, abstain from luxuries, even though he could have had luxuries, right? And the Prophet ﷺ knows the Prophet ﷺ was the highest level psychologist. He knew the human nature. And so he gives him advice that even though you're going into this position of being a governor, and maybe there will be a time will come when there'll be riches, and maybe there will be pomp and glamour, and you can have all the things of the world, but he advises him, he says, abstain from luxuries, for those who live luxurious lives are no servants of Allah. So what's the definition of luxuries? So that's for us to define. And it could be in our world, the way we live. We work with dishwashers, for example, having a fridge which keeps all your food cold, and you can store food for 1 week, 2 weeks. In your freezer you could store food for months. That's a luxury. To have running water, hot and cold, in every level of your house, that's a luxury. Having toilets that flush, that's a luxury. These dishwashers, cooking in the home, that's a luxury. So we don't look at these things as luxuries, but they are for other people. For a majority of the world, these are luxuries. And so we have to be very grateful for what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, number one. And we should not waste, right? We cannot waste anything. That's really important. And we should recognize that everything belongs to Allah. So everything that He's given us, all the luxurious things He's given us, like the comfortable bed, and multiple pairs of clothes and shoes, and cars to ride in. All these are luxuries, and we should be grateful to Allah, because everything has been given to us freely. We have this attitude that, well, I earned it, or I earned the money to get it, or you know we work so hard, or we entitled to it. Yeah, my family has come from here, and we bought this, and we were like this and we were like that. No, this is not the correct attitude, because this is, look at what Prophet ﷺ is saying, that those who live luxurious lives are not servants of Allah, and Allah wants us to be his servants, his humble servants. So if we're going to live in a lot of luxury, and that's, we talked about one level of luxury, what we already living in, that is luxury. But then beyond that, to have a luxurious life where there's lots of waste, and there's pomp and glamour, and it's all about showing other people how good you are, and you walking around showing other people, this kind of thing is not what the Prophet ﷺ intended for his ummah. And so he gave this advice, and the advice is for everybody, that abstain from luxuries. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't use your running water and your dishwashers and all of that. You can, if Allah has given it to you, then be grateful that he made life so easy for you, and you don't have to wake up tomorrow morning and go to the well and fetch some water, or heat up the water before you can use it. You don't have to do any of that. But be very, very grateful. And when you are in that situation, then you always help people who are below you, so that that's a form of gratitude as well. And if Allah has given you a lot, He's given you too much, uh, then use that money, rather than making your life more and more luxurious and more just sedentary. That means you're not even moving, you've got maids running around doing everything, and you don't have to do anything. Instead of doing that, use that money and resources that he's given to serve other people, to serve the servants of Allah. Because everything that you do, you will see it in the akhirah. Every good and bad deed that we do in this world, we will see it. And so it's so important to fashion our deeds so that they are pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is another very important nasiha the Prophet ﷺ gave, which is abstain from luxuries, for those who live luxurious lives are no servants of Allah. So the idea is that we live as servants of Allah, and we are constantly in the remembrance of Allah. And when our lives get too luxurious and too soft, then you'll see that people start forgetting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala too. So we never want to be on that level where we forget Allah, but we want to remember Allah all of the time, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make that easy for us and give us hidayah every day to do that. Right, next hadith is a hadith of Al-Bukhari and Muslim on the authority of Sa'id ibn Zayd. The Prophet ﷺ says, a man who acquires a stretch of land by tyranny is by force or aggression. So if a person acquires a stretch of land by tyranny, and this is very common, it was common in the olden days that a rich person or a mighty person, even kings and rulers, they would go and usurp the land of other people. And today it's happening as well. It's happening on a public level. People's land is being taken away from them. Their homeland is being taken away by tyranny. And then it happens on a private level, where in families, people are not given their share of inheritance, right? So if there's land involved, they're not given it, and it's given, for example, to the male members of the family. It's not given to the females, etc. So it says that a person who acquires a stretch of land by tyranny will be made to wear a yoke made of 7 earths around his neck on the day of judgment. So we can't even imagine that. A yoke is like a collar. So he'll be made to wear a yoke which will be so heavy, like 7 earths. Can you imagine having something that heavy around your neck? So he'll be dragging that land, but not just the land that he usurped, but the land of 7 earths on the day of judgment. So people will be able to tell that this person was a cheat and he cheated people or a person of their land. And next hadith is from Al-Bukhari on the authority of Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu. The Prophet ﷺ said, a man may speak of Allah's pleasure without giving it much importance and yet be raised in status by his creator. And a man or a woman may say something which is abhorrent to Allah, that means Allah doesn't like it, without attaching any importance to it, and it may sweep him or her straight into hell. So this is something about the tongue that a person may be talking and they might say something about Allah. And if you listen to when people talk, and it's very interesting when what people say and how they say it, and because you can read a lot about a person, right? I was going to say guess, but you can actually read a lot about a person and their mentality, where they come from, etc., by the words that they speak. So a person who speaks of Allah's pleasure without giving it much importance, that means he's saying something lofty about Allah. Like, for example, they're talking about the weather, for example, and they say, Allah is so kind to us that He's giving us rain every day of this week, so that the ground will be there, it will be ready for the next season. So we say words like this, and it makes Allah so happy that that person's status is raised by Allah. Allah raises that person's status just by the words that they said. And then another person says something which is abhorrent, that Allah doesn't like it. They didn't mean to say, or it just slipped out, or they complain about Allah. And many people, they take a tone when they're talking about Allah. And I've noticed this, that when something bad happens, then they blame Allah, and they say they talk to Him as though they're talking to a person who is much lower than them. So people should be careful, even if they're complaining to Allah. Complaining to Allah is one thing. That means you're complaining about your life or whatever, the problem that you're in, to Allah, and you're asking Allah to listen to you. But complaining about Allah is another thing. So we should refrain from that, because, technically, Allah is so big that our words are not going to, they don't affect Allah like that, right? But our words can affect us like that. That's the difference, because we might say something which is not pleasing to Allah without attaching any importance to it. You're just talking. You might be angry and you're just talking or upset, but it can sweep that person straight into hell. So na'udhu billah, we have to be very careful, and we talk about Allah, and always talking respectfully about Allah. When we talk about Allah, we use respect like we use for other people. Allah is the most respectful. So why wouldn't we use words of respect when we're talking about Allah? And why would we complain about Him when we know who He is? That's foolish. So be careful in the words, because words have meaning and words have effects. So that's something to remember. Next hadith, a man who has as much as an iota of arrogance in his heart will not enter paradise. Hearing these words of the Prophet, Sallahu Alayhe Wasalam, a man asked, what if a man likes to dress in good clothes and wear good shoes? The Prophet Sallallahu Alayhi Wasallam said, God Himself, Allah Himself, possesses elegance, and He likes elegance. This has nothing to do with arrogance. A man is arrogant when he refuses to accept the truth and considers others to be inferior. With our protectors. So Prophet ﷺ said that a person who has an iota of arrogance, and in another hadith it's been explained like a seed, a small, like a sesame seed, is so small. If somebody has a seed of arrogance in their heart, they will not enter paradise. So when the Sahabas heard this, they said, a man asked that what if a person likes to dress in good clothes and wear good shoes? Because he was thinking to himself, the man who asked this, he must have thought to himself, well, that can look like arrogance, that you're wearing nice clothes and wearing good shoes. So the Prophet said, Allah Himself possesses elegance, and in another meaning for that word, um, Jamal, is beauty. That Allah Himself possesses beauty and He likes beauty. So this has nothing to do with arrogance. So if you like to wear nice clothes and like to wear nice shoes, etc., look good, then this doesn't have anything to do with arrogance unless there's an arrogant intention behind it. And there's a difference here. So if there's an arrogant intention behind it, you wear the clothes, na'udhu billah, to show people that your clothes are better than everybody else's, or you wear the clothes to show how expensive they are, or where you got them from, or you wear designer labels to show off, then there is arrogance in that. That is arrogance. But if you wear them because you like nice things, and everybody likes nice things, everybody loves beautiful things, so you are wearing it because it is beautiful and it makes you happy, then Allah is saying that Allah Himself possesses beauty and He likes beauty. And this has nothing to do with arrogance. And then a definition is given of what is arrogance. So a man is arrogant, or a woman is arrogant, when he or she refuses to accept the truth. So the first part is that they refuse to accept the truth. What Allah has given as a truth, they refuse to accept that. And they consider others to be inferior. So they consider other people to be lesser than them. And unfortunately, in most societies, you'll see that people are always trying to be upwardly mobile. They're always trying to better themselves and show that they are better, and where they are in the pecking order of the community, for example, let's say. So people will always try in different ways to show their worth, right? They're always trying to show their worth to other people, and they're always trying to show their respectability to other people. But this is a form of arrogance, because they're trying to show other people that they are better than others, right? Are better than the ones who are maybe like at the lower ends of society. For example, one time this woman, she moved to another area, and she said to me that, the area that we moved in, better people live over there, like the more higher class. So I said, how are they better? People are people. How are they better? So she said, well, they're a better type of people. And so unfortunately, this is what is taught in societies. This is what we've grown up with, but it's not true, right? This is not true. This whole class system is not our system at all, right? This is a Hindu system, like, for example, which class you belong to and which class is better than another class. In the eyes of Allah, the best person is the one who has got the best deeds. So we cannot look down on anybody, whether they are poorer than us or richer than us, more educated than us or less educated, or where they came from and how they speak, or whatever it is. We are all equal in the eyes of Allah, and the only thing that distinguishes us is what our deeds are like, what deeds have we done in this world. And if you look at death, for example, that death is the greatest equalizer. When a person dies, you don't look at whether that person was rich or poor and whether you should bury them or not, like on the basis of, well, what society did they come from, and should we bury this person, or should we not bury this person? No, everybody gets buried, and everybody gets the same. Islamically, this is why it's so has equal rights. Everybody gets the same shrouding, everybody gets the same amount of cloth and goes in the same grave. So death is the greatest equalizer, and we learn that beyond that, the only thing that will distinguish a person is their good deeds and what they did in the world. So all these other ideologies that we have grown up with, all these ideologies which we live with in society, all the ideologies that are causing the wars, we will see they will come to nothing, and they don't mean anything. They don't, for Muslims, they don't mean anything. And so we have to look at ourselves, and we have to look at our own beliefs and our own ideologies. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us on the straight path. Every day we read Salah. In our Surah Al-Fatiha, we're always reading, Allah guide us on the straight path. Allah guide us on the straight path. This is what we have to keep focusing on, that we remain on the straight path and we are guided. And I hope you enjoyed this beautiful hadith of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It's important to read the hadith and to even memorize some of them, because when you memorize them, then they will stay in your heart and they become words of wisdom. This is why we try to get children to memorize hadith, because they remain as wisdom throughout their life in their hearts. So when they are in a situation, the hadith comes up and tells them this is how you should do it, or this is what you should be thinking. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from us, inshallah, and we'll see you all next week, inshallah.